Hi, and welcome back to the Global Holistic Coaching Podcast. This is The Conversation Continues. Today, we're talking about burnout, not just what it is, what it does to the body physiologically, but how to break that stress cycle loop. Right. So I think this is a topic that you and I can both agree that we are personally familiar with. And this
Yeah.
is this topic of burnout that has been such a buzzword in our culture for many years. Part of it has been there have been a lot of great books on this, a lot of great TED Talks on this. But I also think that as a culture, we've just been moving faster and faster to the edge of burnout in a lot of different careers and a lot of different lifestyle decisions. It seems to me working in this profession that we're all kind of hitting this level of not knowing when enough is enough and not being able to pull back, and that's for a variety of reasons, right? It's our expectations at work continue to get more and more demanding because we take our work home with us now and we can check our Gmail or our email 24 hours a day. Text messages are coming through. We never really hit the end of our workload. For some of us, never hit it. And then we throw parenting in that. I had a mom saying to me just this week, I can't even get 5 minutes to go to the bathroom. Like when I'm in the bathroom, I have two people in my face, two little people who I love and care about, but I just don't have any time. So this is becoming, almost like an epidemic in and of itself, which is this inability to grant ourselves or gift ourselves some time or some space and grace to process and kind of unwind after a week. So let's
Right.
just jump right in. I mean, we've both been there. How have
Yeah.
you overcome burnout in the past?
Well, I think also it's recognizing it because we're in such a fast-paced society right now. I think it creeps up on us. Burnout comes over time. So it's having kind of that self-awareness, or imagine like an internal gas tank. At least in our car, we can see when we need to fill up. However, for us personally, we have to be sensitive enough to notice when we need to refuel. So I think that's the first thing is recognizing that we need more self care, or that we're heading toward burnout before it happens. That would be ideal. And if we're just okay, well, like the tsunami hit, I'm in burnout right now. What do I do? And then that's going to be a different approach. But what I'd like to offer is, from someone who has been coaching for decades, I've really watched over the decades the changes. And pretty much in my lifetime, I have seen a busy and full society. But boy, oh boy, the past 15 years, it has just been on this steady incline. And I find that more and more people are completely full, stressed out, feeling overwhelmed. So the
Mhm.
first thing I would recommend is to put down what you can. So oftentimes we take on not only what we have to take on, but even sometimes we take on things that aren't necessarily a have to. And I'd like you to take a look at whatever it is you can put down. What might that look like? Perhaps it's an invitation and you're exhausted, and giving yourself permission to say no, giving yourself permission to stay in and rest. Perhaps it's that 1 hour bath that you fill up, light some candles, and actually give yourself time just by yourself in silence to soak in an amazing feeling. So it's just, where can you let go of whatever it is you can, and where can you put in some downtime? That's where I'll start. What do you think about that, Jay?
Yeah, I think that self-awareness is so important to knowing when it's time to take a step back and get off the hamster wheel and put some things down. And that is also, I think, part of self-awareness is giving burnout a definition. So I just was curious. So I just kind of like looked at WebMD, which this is not a diagnostic condition, right? Like depression and anxiety, we can diagnose clinically. Burnout is not a diagnosable situation. So you may be hearing this word and not exactly know what we're talking about. And basically, the definition in Psychology Today and WebMD is a state of emotional, mental, physical exhaustion brought on by prolonged or repeated stress that has not been successfully managed. So, why that's important is because when you can say that and recognize, that's a part of self awareness, is kind of recognizing, wow, like I'm a new parent, I started this new job, and I have an issue with boundaries. And I mentioned boundaries because I think that was something that you were speaking to, is that there are so many things that we could actually say no to that we don't say no to, even if we really, really, really don't want to do the thing, we're still saying yes. And
Yeah.
so that requires us to have self-awareness about why we're saying yes to the things that we don't have it to give. And we have a whole nother podcast coming on boundaries, so I won't spend too much time talking about that. But in addition to knowing and kind of having this definition of burnout of like, I've been in this prolonged stress cycle and I have actually had my sympathetic nervous system activated for a long enough time that I can't seem to get out of it. What you're going to look for symptoms is I've heard it described this way and I feel it the same way. It's like when your light is just out. Like your candle is, your flame is out, or you're just energetically on, some people would say a soul level, some people would say an energetic level, some people would just say over exhaustion, like just that fire that is ignited sometimes inside of you is out. And why I brought up depression and anxiety and how they differentiate from burnout is because a lot of the symptoms of burnout can actually overlap with anxiety and depression. In depression, we'll see a loss in passions, interest to spend time with people you used to enjoy spending time with, or doing things that used to bring you joy. And we also see that in burnout. So that can look a little bit different depending on what else is going on. Same thing with anxiety, right? Somebody with generalized anxiety disorder is going to have racing heartbeat, some, potential stomach issues or problems eating, maybe some brain fog, maybe some chronic fatigue. Those kind of things we're also going to see in burnout. And the reason why there's an overlap is, as I mentioned, the sympathetic nervous system is activated for so long that the body doesn't get the message of how to self regulate. So that involves the thyroid, that involves the adrenal gland, that involves cortisol, and it involves the part of our brain called the amygdala, which is actually responsible for that fight, flight, freeze being hyperactive. So the amygdala is kind of the part of the brain that says, hey, we got to get this energy going because we got to get through this thing. And
Right.
what's interesting now is that it's not that getting through this thing is fighting the bear, or getting through this thing is returning from war. Getting through this thing now is our never-ending list of to-do things. So we actually aren't giving ourselves an opportunity to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And I have a lot of tricks for that. But going back to the self-awareness component, you can't treat what you don't know you have in your body. And the body and mind are so interconnected that what we're thinking about, how we're spiraling out, is going to cause and wreak havoc on the internal body system. So it is important in real time to know, wow, if you're listening to some of this and you can relate, like I am exhausted, my light is out. I do have a racing heartbeat that I can't turn off. I am having trouble sleeping. Then you may want to be looking at, maybe you're going to treat this as feeling burnt out. And then, of course, if we get through burnout and we're still not quite there, it might be something deeper like depression or anxiety. And I'll just give this real quick if you're trying to figure out, well, what's the difference? Here's the easiest way to say this. If you took somebody with depression or generalized anxiety and you put them in a villa in the south of France on the beach for the week, they would still feel their symptoms. If you took somebody who is burnt out and you put them in the French Riviera on the beach for a week, after 2 days, they're going to go, that's
Uh,
the difference.
just a
Like when
great,
you can't, when you're taking it wherever you go, there you are, you're taking it with you. Yeah.
what a
Then it might be
great
more clinical. So that's like a little cheat I like to use.
What a great example. I mean, that is just perfect. Yeah. And, just for the average person, too, as far as kind of becoming more self aware before you hit that burnout, the fatigue, the exhaustion, some of the things that, Gina mentioned. And I also want to add little telltale signs if you're a little snappier than usual.
Yes, mood change.
If you find your patience is,
Yep.
done, and maybe you're having a little bit more anger, frustration.
Irritability.
Yeah, these are all kind of pointers that, hey, you might be burning the candle at both ends.
Mm,
So it is our responsibility, to keep ourselves where we don't overreact. It's our responsibility to keep ourselves in a place where we can respond because what we go through if we're launching at other people, now all of a sudden we're affecting, our family, friends, community, coworkers. So a little bit of self-care goes a long way. Not only it's the best thing you can do for yourself, it's the best thing you can do for your family, again, friends and the people you work with. So really kind of checking in with, you know, again, what I said earlier about what you can put down. And one of the things that some of you might not want to hear is, the cell phone and the digital devices. And I'm going to call it self-parenting is where you can self-regulate and, put it down. Turn the phone off when you can and be honest with yourself as far as that voice that tells us, oh, we have to carry, the phone around with us in every room. We might miss a call. There was a time it was okay to miss a call. We didn't even have a cell phone, and
right,
we were all fine.
right.
So, it might even be at night if you're binge watching, your favorite show. Uh, can you limit that? Can you, turn the TV off, at least an hour before you go to bed so that you have time to like decompress and unwind and maybe save the binging for, one day a month or something rather than every day. So what we're looking for is we're looking for ways that we can create a little bit more space and
Mhm.
not necessarily even fill it. Sometimes, nothing is just what we need. Um, but it's not focusing on what we can't put down, it's focusing on what we can. And being able to recognize when we're filling every single moment with something to do. And, Gina had mentioned this earlier. There was a time when, people had that 9 to 5 job and then it was over. Then you came home, you had dinner, it was family time. But now with our cell phones, computers, and all the information that's coming in across the world, we tend to be an overload. And so it's really recognizing that and having the discipline, the self discipline, which I also like to call self love, having enough self love to pull in the reins, knowing when and what is enough.
100%. And that's I'm thinking about that in two ways. Like when is enough of me giving myself? Like when can I pull back from how much I'm giving? But also when is enough when I'm looking at poor coping skills like binge watching Netflix or drinking alcohol or eating. And that's another telltale sign, by the way, is that if you're starting to see yourself snacking a little bit more, maybe reaching for that second glass of wine, maybe you're not really a sweets person, now you are, you're watching that your social media consumption and maybe Netflixing is going up a little bit. That also may be a sign of burnout because it's like when we're drowning, we're just reaching for anything. And those are the easiest things to reach for first, but we know, and science backs this, that those things like drinking and eating are a temporary fix, and actually over time end up causing more harm to the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system balance. And so instead, replacing that with, some of the things that have already come up, things that help empty your cup, but also exercise. Don't forget you have that's a free thing for you that you can always spend 10 to 15 minutes in your home. You don't even have to go to the gym to get the benefits of elevated serotonin and dopamine in the body, which help calm. You always have the ability to take a pause or take a breath in the middle of a day.
Yep.
You really can give yourself a pause before reacting and before sending out that email or before saying yes to something. You can say, if it's real time, take a pause, take a breath. Can I think about that and get back to you? Even if it's a work assignment, if someone's asking you, do you have enough time to do this? We don't need to respond right away. Sometimes taking a pause can go a really long way when we're trying to prevent or treat burnout. So all of these things, that we're talking about, I want to just kind of highlight too is that I think we're getting burnt out on a new level now with news and
Definitely.
political consumption, and also feeling like mental exhaustion about worrying and thinking about all, the economy and all of the things that
But
are
we're going to
up in
get
the air right
away.
now.
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of it. And, I do want to make a point that things cycle. And sometimes we find ourselves in burnout and then we bounce back. I like to offer, making enough deposits in your healthy bank account so that when you do go into those cycles that are going to call more from you, that you'll be able to ride that wave. Gina, talking about burnout, I couldn't help but think about, your early days when you were in law school. And I have a picture, okay, because I said, I have got to show Gina what she did and how she got through this. She was studying for the bar exam and seriously nursing one baby and had my grandson, who was, just a few years old, standing with his hand on her head. So she's nursing. My grandson has his hand on her head. Her hair's in a ponytail, it's all a mess. And she's on her laptop and she's writing and studying. And I was just like, oh, we took a picture. And when she passed the bar, we actually had the picture framed. But that was a period of time that was extreme burnout for you. And, if you can go back there and kind of remember some of the things, how did you get through? Because, I mean, you're in law school with two small kids. And
And working full time.
yeah, so I think that's something that, would help, would give everyone a few pointers there.
And that kind of like goes into the point I was about to make about the politics and the like community burnout too and exhaustion, which I'll circle back to that. So I think the question is, how did I prevent burnout? Because I got through it and I was able to accomplish this in a time where it was insane. And one of the coping mechanisms that I now reflecting back can see how people utilize this, maybe not in a healthy way, but sometimes it's just survival, is that kind of disassociation where you're not actually recognizing how much you're going through and your days. I mean, I remember there were times in my life where I had 20-hour work days, 20 to 22 sometimes hour work days, and I wasn't getting enough sleep. And over time that impacted my health. I call it samurai training, and everything that I do on my own is in my mind samurai training. Like yesterday I was exhausted. I did not want to go work out. I couldn't have been more tired. And I went for a run in the backcountry behind our house, which is like very hilly. And I made myself do it. And how I did it was I was like, it's time for samurai training because I have a lot on my plate this week. And if I don't do that, I'm not going to have the bandwidth to get through this week. So a lot of it is playing defense, honestly, is that when it's organization with time management, I couldn't have gotten through the things that I've done, doctorate degree, clinical health therapist, passing all my boards, raising two kids, having all these businesses without organization skills. And we do have some podcasts coming up on that topic, but organization is going to save your life in those busy times of your life. And I would put in, and I still do this sometimes when I'm going through what I call like hell weeks where I have a lot going on. I schedule downtime and I schedule time to work out and I schedule don't tell my husband, but I would schedule date time and time to check in with him, like Friday night, set an alarm or like check in with the husband, because when you're in those kind of flight fight cycles of just survival, but you've got to get through this thing because there's an end game, like passing the bar exam, there's an end game. So this isn't a long-term fix, but when you're going through those times, everything's ebbs and flows. We're going through those times where it's time to soldier up. Organization is going to save your life in playing defense, knowing that if I don't take care of myself, if I don't exercise, if I don't meditate, if I don't have my self-care, and I have to remind people to take a shower, have 5 minutes in the morning just to yourself. Like, even if you have to go into the bathroom, lock the door. I just told my mom that or my mother client, it's okay to lock the door. When you have littles, when you're in the bathroom, you can lock the door. They'll understand that, mom needs a couple minutes. Now I understand when they're super young, that's not a possibility, but I'm talking about 6 to 10 years old, you can lock the door. Give yourself the gift of just a pause in the middle of the day. All those things, playing defense is going to help you get through it. And knowing that life isn't always a sprint, there's going to be times for sprinting and times for resting, and just really calling attention to that, and the last thing I'll say, which has always helped me prevent burnout, is I think about setting my future self up for success. And I think about the future version of myself having that breath and being able to take that break. And so when I go through those big, work times, I always make sure to allow my future self the benefit of saying, thank you. Now I'm going to take that pause and take that break and kind of get off the hamster wheel. And then just circling back to the original sentence I had started to say earlier, just about the political burnout. And, I'm getting this question almost every day from a lot of different kinds of people in a lot of different areas, is that how do you prevent mental burnout when things in your community or your country are happening that are awful and you want to help and you don't know how? And so I'm just going to say that give yourself patience and give yourself time to not check in with the news a couple of days, even at a time. Don't check in with the news. And that's okay. And I'll tell you why. If you're exhausted and you're burnt out, you're not going to have the energy to be able to help in any capacity. You're not going to be able to help your community. You're not going to be able to help your friends or your coworkers when they need it. And that's why we always, love that analogy about when the plane's going down, you have to put that oxygen mask on yourself first, because if you don't have the reserves to give it away. You can't give away energy you don't have. So it's not saying that I'm not going to do anything. It's just recognizing that sometimes it feels overwhelming. And sometimes we just have to take a step back, take a break, get off the hamster wheel a little bit, and then kind of reorganize and think about the next steps.
Wow, yeah, I think we've certainly covered a lot, and I want to come from a different place. My beautiful daughter here, she could talk about the things that she did do and how she got through it. And if I went to my younger days, I would be able to talk about what I didn't do and didn't get through it. So I learned a different way and hopefully passed on to my girls. Um, I did go through a burnout and didn't realize that it was happening. I was just in it, raising kids, working full time, and definitely burning the candle at both ends. And then a life tragedy hit, and I didn't have the reserves, or I hadn't made enough deposits, to get me through it. And so now when I talk to young moms, I tell them that it's not selfish when you take some time for yourself, or, for those of you who do not have children, believe me, I know your plate is full as well. And so I'm going to repeat myself just saying that when we don't take care of ourselves, that's actually when we're being selfish. I learned that the hard way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's the ebbs and flows in life too, is that sometimes even Superman is going to burn out depending on what
That's,
life is throwing at you, right? And that's that self-awareness piece. Like right now, I'm in it. And sometimes we're in the trenches and sometimes we need to ask for help,
yeah.
right? And that may go back to our topic that we'll discuss when we talk
Well,
about boundaries.
can I just add too, because I don't want to end without saying what keeps me now from burnout. And
Mm,
when we say it over and over again, oh my God, here she goes again, Lisa talking about prayer and meditation. But I do notice the difference in if my schedule, takes me in a different direction, and I don't do my meditation till later in the afternoon. I like it in the morning. But I feel a difference, and I'll notice, and I'll be a little bit more on edge. So finding some kind of time, even if it's waking up an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes earlier, to connect with a source, whatever your beliefs are, whatever path you're on, and to quiet the mind. If you don't want to call it meditation, call it some breath work, but it's just an opportunity where nothing's coming in, and that you can just, what I like to say is kind of like a human garbage disposal, where you're allowing something to go out.
love it.
I just wanted to plug that before we finish, because talking about burnout and not talking about some kind of prayer and connection to source and meditation, good luck, because to me that's like a power tool. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, and it's great to share, because we're going to offer you a lot of different kinds of tools, and it's like a buffet. You get to take what appeals to you and the language that appeals to you. And if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, or you're dealing with this, and this is a great place to start, but not end game. There's a really good book called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by two twin sisters. Their last name is Nagoski, I want to say. maybe Emily and Amelia Nagoski, something like that. But they talk a lot about the neuroscience and some of what we had mentioned a little bit about the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and how to activate the rest and reset response. And they offer some science, some really nice real life examples too. So that's out there for you as a resource. And if this is something that you're just feeling like it's time to give back to you and get off the hamster wheel and start, down that road of self-awareness and transformation, our website offers a lot of wonderful online courses and workshops. It's www.globalholisticcoaching.com. If you have any questions or if there's anything we can do to help you on your path, you can always email us at globalholisticcoaching@gmail.com or drop your questions or comments in the comment box below if you're watching us on YouTube. And we'd love to hear from you if you have overcome burnt out in the past. What are some ways you did it? How did you get through those hard times? And it's nice to hear from other people because it inspires, right? We learn from each other and we inspire each other with our own personal experience.
We want to hear questions, and we also want to hear how you handle burnout. Oftentimes the jewels won't come from me, or they won't come from Gina. Oftentimes the jewels come from you. So go ahead and be generous and put your comments for other people to learn. It takes all of us.
Okay. And we will see you next week.
See you next week.